Okay, hello and welcome to my class. This is my fourth session with you, and earlier I had done with you reading comprehension. I have completed section A with you, and that's of 20 marks. After that, I thought of starting with writing, but then I thought maybe it's better done when we are together. So I'm going to move on to section C, that is literature. The weightage for literature is 40 marks, and the NCRT has included two books for literature section. One is Flamingo and one is Vistas. When we started our classes prior to this scenario of lockdown and pandemic, you recall, we have completed lesson number 1 and we have done a poem too. So I thought from Flamingo. So I thought it's best in your interest to continue with Flamingo, right? So since I haven't informed you, I'm sure you don't have your book right now, but that's okay, right? You just follow my instructions as I teach you, and just take some book, a note pad or something, and a pen to keep a track of what I'm going to tell you, and keep noting. Maybe after my class you could read the lesson at your pace and understand and come back with your queries if you have any, right? So what I've selected today for teaching is lesson number 2 from Flamingo. Okay, so the title of the lesson is Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood by Anis Jung. Before I begin, I would love to give you something about the author, Anis Jung. She hailed from an aristocratic background, since her father worked for the Nizam of Hyderabad, and obviously she comes from a higher upper rich class, and she had also one more blessing that you could say. She inherited the quality of writing from her parents, because her parents were writers as well. She took her basic education in India, and then thereafter moved on to study further in States, in America, and she pursued her higher education there. When she returned back, obviously she took into writing of as an editor, and later on she came up with a book. This particular lesson is an excerpt from this book, Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood. If you have to ask me personally, I would rate her, or rather I would compare her with Sudha Murthy. Children, you have read about Sudha Murthy, you've come across her writing, and why do I say I put her very close to Sudha Murthy? There's a reason for that. Sudha Murthy also describes the conditions of normal people, an exchange, an experience that she has with common people in day-to-day life. Similarly, when we elaborate or analyze Anis Jung's writings, we come across very subtle expressions of what she has observed. I will term her as a keen observer of what's happening, especially in our country. Her major interest lied in the condition of women, how Indian women have suffered the injustice, or maybe the customs and culture, and thereon moving on to the various aspects that she observed. In this lesson, she puts her observations, of course, as she has come across the characters. So this is all about the author. Now a moment please. Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood. Lost Spring. Spring. Okay. Spring, in the literary term or in poetic language, what does it refer to? Spring. Give a moment of thought. Okay. Here it goes. See, spring and winter often occur in poems. You also come across them, figuratively. So what does spring refer to? Spring is always considered as something happy, something fruitful, something that is related to pleasantness, or maybe something bearing, something good. It is never referred to as something bad. Whereas winter resembles harshness or maybe suffering, right? So, but then we have spring in the title, but we have lost spring. And as I read ahead the title, Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood, there lies the clue. So, can you tell me what exactly is lost? Okay, spring, the word, is giving you the clue of what is lost. Okay, I'll come back to that, but before I go there, let me give you the background or the backdrop of this lesson. Okay, the background of this lesson is poverty in India and child labor, right? Poverty. Undeniably, India, we are never ever referred to apart from poverty. Like, poverty goes very close. If you ask a foreigner to describe India, they would begin with a poor country or something like that. Means the notions are changing, but poverty is rampant in our country. And one of the reasons is population. As the other aspects that we discuss, population is the reason for poverty. But then they both are interrelated in a way that poverty is related to population as well. So, poverty in India is rampant, and child labor. Actually, it's illegal. Child labor isn't something that is allowed. But in India, can we say that we have nothing to do with child labor? It will be wrong to state that, because at every stall or anywhere that you go, maybe a shop, maybe transport, and you will see small children engaging themselves in labor. So if it is illegal, why do you think child labor is prominent? There are reasons for that. Now let us jot down some of the reasons for child labor. First, child labor is cheap. Children will not demand more, right? So they can be recruited and they won't demand for more money. You can just take them at any price. Secondly, children are unaware of their rights, right? So you can put across anything and make them work. So that brings me to my third point, that is, they can be exploited, right? They can be exploited and they won't raise their voice. Moreover, they'll be pleased with small things, like you provide them meals, you give them some basic facilities, and they'll be overjoyed and they'll never refuse, and they will be doing their work. So though child labor is totally illegal, we still have child labor as the first choice of anyone who wants to run a small stall, or maybe wants to have a small scale industry, and so on and so forth. So child labor is a bitter reality of our society, though it is illegal, right? So now with this clue, poverty and child labor, let us come back to the title, Lost Spring. Now, can you relate what's exactly lost? Yeah, you've guessed it right. What is lost is childhood. Of whom, you may ask? Childhood of this poor children. And they live in the state of poverty, so they are deprived of everything that is associated with children. What is associated with children? If you generally ask this question, children are so well protected, loved, cared, and the basic two things that they engage in is, come on, tell me, what's it? What do you think children engage themselves in mainly? Two things, if you are to tell me quickly, So it is, obviously, without thinking, you'll tell me it's learning and playing. Those are the things that children love to, and children are always seen doing that. So, but when we talk about this poor children, they are deprived of these basic two things that every child would love to do. They are deprived because they are burdened by responsibility. They are burdened by the fact that they are breadwinners. The family themselves, it's not the outside factors, but their own families consider them as assets for earning. Once they are on their own, like they can walk and do things by themselves, the family expects that they should bring something for the or contribute towards the maintenance of the family. So we have to means it's a very sorry state, or you can say it's a sad scenario, that when these little children are to be engaged or are to spend their time playing, studying, and getting access to various facilities, we have to see them slogging, okay, or burdened under work and employed as laborers, or maybe exposed to harsh treatments by adults. So it's a very sad, bitter reality of not only India. We cannot say only India. In many countries, where poverty is still an issue. So this is the backdrop. So lost spring refers to lost childhood of this poor people. That's clear to you. Now we'll move on at the contents, like what exactly is in this lesson. The lesson is divided into two parts, okay, part 1 and part 2. And what goes into these parts are like, they are stories of two different children. As I mentioned, Anise Jung, when she traveled or moved around, she met people. So here in this excerpt or extract, we are going to study two, like case study kind of thing. We're going to learn about two children who belong to different backgrounds. So part 1 is, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. That's the title. And part 2, the title is, I want to drive a car. Okay, I repeat, part 1. In part 1, the title of part 1 is, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. And part 2, I want to drive a car. And both these stories are about poverty and children. Of course, the story is connected with children, but the backgrounds are different. Okay, so let me tell you the main character. The main character in the first part is Sahib. Okay, did you get it? Sahib-e-Alam. Sahib. And he is a rag picker. Okay, rag picker. The second story, the main, you can say the main character, the main person or the child is Mukesh, and he belongs to a bangle maker's family. Okay, right. So that is the first point. The second point is, the first story is in the backdrop of Simapuri. Okay, that's close to Delhi. And the second story is about bangle makers of Firozabad. Okay, and then I'll take you through the nuances or through the important things of the lesson, but these are the two basic things you must remember. The first story is about Sahib, okay, a rag picker, a child who is a rag picker, and his name is Sahib. And the second one is about Mukesh, and he belongs to a bangle makers family in Firozabad, and Simapuri and Firozabad. Rag pickers and bangle makers. In short, these are the two things that are very distinct, which we will have to as we go through it, we'll learn about them, like rag pickers of Simapuri and bangle makers of Firozabad. So are you ready to start with me? First, today let me begin with the first part, that is, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage, and that story is about Sahib, the rag picker, right? So here it goes. The first point I will say, according to what I have noted down, is empty promises is the first part. Empty promises. I put this empty promise. Why? I'll explain. See, the author, as she moves, she happens to meet this Sahib, the rag picker, and he's scrounging in the garbage. Scrounging is trying to find out something. He's scrounging. And she just happens to ask him, why are you doing this? And he says, I don't have anything else to do, and I'm doing this. So the very next obvious question is, she inquires, don't you go to school? And you know what he replies? I have no school to go. The author is very prompt in saying, if someday I have my school, will you join? Imagine Sahib's expression. He was very, very quick to answer this. He says yes. And then they depart, and some days pass by, some days pass, and then Sahib happens to meet the author, and he comes running. And you know what he asked her? Is your school ready? This comes like a thunderbolt. This comes like a shocking statement to the author. She replies wisely, saying it takes time to build a school, but then she is reflecting on the point that promises like this are made all the time to these poor people in their bleak world. You see these promises, and I would term it as empty promise. What did the author do? Did she have any malintention, or what was it? She knew she was not accountable, and she just spoke that, isn't it? So this is what I'm trying to say, that poor people come across such things all the time in their dark world. So the first thing, you must remember the heading, empty promise, right? But thereafter the author and Sahib become good friends, and so she asked him, what's your name? And the kid replies, I am Sahib-e-Alam. The author is glad that he does not know the meaning of his name. He knows the name, right? Sahib-e-Alam, but he does not know the meaning, because Sahib-e-Alam means the king of the world, and it is so contrary to the life that he is living, isn't it? Now thereafter, after this, the author moves on to describe the rat pickers, okay? And what does she term them as? The rat pickers, she calls them an army of barefoot boys. Certain things she points out here, which you have to remember. First, they move in groups, okay, to pick up from the garbage, to scrounge from the garbage, to find something from the garbage. They move in groups, right? Secondly, they appear and disappear in a blink of eyes, just like birds. In the morning you'll see birds, and then they will disappear. They'll appear all together and disappear. So there is secondly, and the third thing she says is, she has noticed they never wear anything in their feet, like they are barefoot. Barefoot, yeah, that's what she mentions, an army of barefoot boys. So she is curious that why aren't they wearing chappals? And when she talks to the boys, okay, or the kids, they have various excuses, like maybe my mother has kept it somewhere, or the other one says, I don't know, I don't have one. Various excuses. But what the author concludes is, probably it is their tradition, because chappal, or is not very expensive and you could afford, but these rat pickers do not want to wear chappals. They would prefer to go barefoot. So the author's conclusion is that it's a culture, and in a way to show the perpetual poverty, right? And thereafter, slightly away from the main line of the story, the author quotes an example, a man from Udupi. Okay, she just gives us this example to help us understand what she's trying to tell us, okay, about this culture of moving barefoot. So what she says is, she knew a man from Udupi, and she narrates an instance there. This is not directly connected to Sahib, but that's what she tells us. What is the crux of that incident is that the son of the Pandit, okay, the son of the temple Pandit, has changed drastically, okay. He is now going to school, he is wearing shoes, and he is following, a lifestyle that is different to his father. But nothing has changed for the rat pickers, okay. Over generations, time has elapsed, but nothing actually has changed for these rat pickers, okay. They remain the same from the time she has known them. So she says that though we are moving ahead in times, in India, in rural India, anywhere in the world, many things are changing. But for rag pickers, I don't know, this remains the same. That's what she's trying to tell us from the example of the man from Udupi. Okay. Then she moves on to tell us the condition of these rag pickers. Now you need to know rag pickers are living in Simapuri. It's in the periphery of Delhi. But what does the author tell? Though it is in periphery of Delhi, it is miles apart metaphorically. What does she mean? She means that the condition of Simapuri and Delhi are north and south poles. Delhi, as you know, is the capital of India, is progressive, has all the amenities, business, whatever you may say, name it and you have it in Delhi. And on the contrary, if you talk about Simapuri, she describes it in this manner that it was wilderness, okay, before these rag pickers arrived. Now you may ask, from where have they arrived? Actually, they are from Bangladesh, okay, Dhaka. There were natural calamities there, like storms and all, and they had to leave that place and they have settled here. Why do they settle here? It's comfortable for them because at least they get meals. That's the only reason. They don't have roof, shelter, permanent houses, nothing, no facility, no sewage facility, nothing. But they prefer living there because at least they can feed their stomachs. They get through this, rag picking. There are two things that are in their favor. One is the advantage of freedom, like they're not under anyone, and secondly, at least they can feed their aching stomachs. They don't have to worry about hunger. So they really like rag picking. And the author does inquire, ask certain women that, don't you want to go back to your place like Dhaka? You don't want to go back because the beautiful lands there and good natural scenic views, and the women, though they are in tattered attires, they're not having anything much to wear and all, but they say that no, they're happy here, right? So the rag picker's condition is described further, which you read elaboratively and underline your notes and get in touch with that. So the rag pickers are here purely because they can feed their stomach. Now moving on to garbage, like rag picking and garbage are very important. The main source of what they get is from the garbage. But what garbage means to the adults and children are two different things. To the adults, a garbage is a way to live or a livelihood, right? The way to earn money. But to children, it is something wrapped in wonder. They are curious to go and scrounge and maybe find something, maybe a toy, maybe a shoe, maybe a rupee, money. That's the title, isn't it? That's what the title is. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. So for children, it's an act of surprise. It amuses them. It's fun for them. They really like to do it because there is an element of surprise, and they may find something which will give them immense joy. So remember, garbage to adults and garbage to the kids mean two different things, right? Then the author tells us that she sees Sahib on the fence of a sports club. He is swinging on the fence and keenly observing the game of tennis. He has also worn shoes, though the shoe has a hole, but he has worn a shoe and he is gazing at the game and happy. And one more thing is that the watchman does allow him to get in when there is no one and play on the swings and all. But when the author looks at Sahib, what she feels is that he is so happy even if the shoes are torn, because for rag pickers, that's the scenario. They don't bother whether the shoes are new or they are branded. They're just happy that they can get a shoe. And then their happiness is so simple. And though he is enjoying the game, but the author feels that this game is not in his reach. That it's hard. Some games really require a lot of money, and it's not possible for poor people to engage, poor children to play such games, because there are such high fees for club fees, maybe the equipments, everything cost. But the poor children, especially these rat pickers, are happy just to observe the game, right? Finally, in the conclusion part of this portion, this first story, she meets Sahib, okay? The author needs to meet Sahib. Sahib has a long face. He's not very happy that day. And he's carrying a canister, can, okay, of milk. And she talks to him and he says that I have taken up a job on a tea stall. They provide me meals, they give me money. And that's how he has taken up. He has given up rat picking and he has joined a tea stall. The author observes that his carefree look is missing. And the canister that he is carrying seems heavy also. And in concluding lines, the author puts, Sahib is no longer his master. So though rat picking was not a very good condition, but Sahib was happy because the freedom was there. He was not bound by time and he could go, and the bag or whatever he was carrying was his. Now the canister belongs to the tea stall vendor, and timings and everything. So his childhood is caught up in all this thing, right? So that's the end of the first part. I hope you've got me. I'll just give a quick review about it. The first thing is Sahib, how the author meets him, and about the empty promise. Thereafter she describes the rat pickers and their barefoot army of barefoot boys, the reason why they like moving barefoot. Thereafter she gives us an example of a man from Odepi. Then she tells us the life of rat pickers in Simapuri, like what kind of living conditions they have. And after that she tells us about Sahib, how he is watching the game of tennis, and finally to conclude how he has lost his freedom because he has joined a tea stall, right? So that's the end of the first part. We'll move on to the second part. Second part is about Firozabad, bangle makers of Firozabad, and the story is related there. The character, the boy whom the author meets in this condition is Mukesh, and Mukesh is different. Really, he's different to others who are there. The author finds him different because when the author asked him, what do you want to be? He says, I want to be a motor mechanic. Now, that is unheard in these families of Firozabad who are totally, all of them, in every house they are indulged in making bangles. They are exposed to hot furnaces, dingy cells, and therefore resulting in loss of eyesight and many other health hazards. They are aware, but that's all. They have accepted it. The families in Firozabad have accepted it as their destiny. They have just thought that this is how we have, this is our karma, and we're born in this family, so we ought to do this. But when she finds a different thing in Mukesh, she's happy. She's very glad to know that Mukesh does not think like that, like the other bangle makers of Firozabad. And Mukesh is so happy one day to take her to show, because his acquaintance with our author is close, and he finds that now he can take her to see where they live. And as she's moving to go to Mukesh's house, she notices that how they live, animals and human beings living in coexistence, and stinking lanes, and I don't have to describe to you much. I rather say Dharavi, isn't it? Dharavi of Mumbai could be a good example for you to understand that what kind of living conditions it is. And then she moves on, and they finally arrive at Mukesh's place, and it just has a wobbly door, and she gets in and she can see someone working on the starting a lady, a very young lady, a sister-in-law of Mukesh. She's a very young girl, probably very, very young. And Mukesh's father and Mukesh's brother, when they arrive, she has to put that veil, and the old grandmother of Mukesh is there. So various things now, 2-3 things that our author is bringing to us. One is the condition of women. The child marriage aspect also is touched upon in this, in the way she presents. The third thing is how much this poverty has moved into apathy. Like, the families themselves are not ready to get out of it. They just think that this is what they are destined to, or they are born for, right? And she also describes that Mukesh's family at least have been able, like the father has been able to pass on the art of making bangles as well as provide a roof, because even that is a luxury now. Not everyone has a roof above them, but Mukesh's family has a roof, so they are fortunate, right? And then she says that this cry of poverty, and this in every house it is, and every house is in the same position, and they are engaged now in such a mind numbing toil. Like, it's totally now they have accepted it to that extent that they can't think of anything else. They are born, they are put in this process of bangle making, and then they accept it so easily, and maybe they get old, they lose their eyesight, but that's okay. They just feel that that's how they have to live, right? Every house is indulging in this kind of activity, and from children, they begin from a very tender age, and it goes on their youth and their old age. Everything vanishes in this. The author is a bit curious, and she inquires that why don't they get into cooperatives? Like, why don't they make a group and start something, because this bangle making, though it's a tedious process, it isn't giving them enough to eat. They are not getting enough to eat, yet they are all doing that. So she is keen to ask them that why aren't you all kind of improvising on the way you can earn, so that you get more income. But to that they answer that if we take initiative, if we get into groups, what happens is they are pulled by the policemen and they are put in jails for no reason. They are accused of crimes, and that's it. They have no leader to take their case ahead, so that desperately fails. So finally the author concludes that there are two things working here. In this scenario of the bangle makers of Firozabad, there are two things that are working. One is the caste that they are born in, like the conditions in which they are born in, right? Because already if they are born in bangle makers family, they are taking it for granted. I mean, they are just giving up, and they are thinking that it's a stigma already, and they are not looking forward to anything else. And second thing is the vicious circle of the policemen, middlemen, you can say bureaucrats, politicians, who are not ready to help them, but rather put them in trouble. So together all of these people put a baggage on this poor, especially children, of these places, have nothing to look forward to. So they put a burden of poverty on them, and therefore they can never come out of this. Therefore the author is very happy with Mukesh, because he has a spark of at least thinking differently. But the author tries to question him. You want to become a motor mechanic, you don't have a garage here. So he says, I will go, it's far from here, but I will go. And the author tries to find out that how restricted is his dream. So she says, do you also dream of flying a plane? To which he looks perplexed, and he doesn't seem to react. And this portion ends by the author just telling us that planes fly over their place. So though what we can conclude from this is that the world is moved ahead, is advancing, and planes is no longer a luxury in many countries. Like, people just commute in planes for work, right? They commute in planes for work, and that's not considered as a luxury. But in India and in certain places, planes, even people have not gone that far to think of planes. Car itself is something of a luxury, and so that with that the author concludes. So let me run you back through these two cases. Both the extracts of both the stories are about poor children, their lives, One is about the rat pickers, the other one is about bangle makers, Seemapuri and Firozabad. And our characters, our main characters are Sahib and Mukesh. Everything is very simple in this lesson, but what is important, my dear student, is that you become sensitive towards every aspect of what you have. Probably you may be complaining, whining about things that you don't have, or you may be expecting more, but then at those times you should think of the poor people who do not have anything. And also you have to think of doing something for them. It's not only important to just feel. You should think of how you can contribute to the society in order to change these scenarios in India. Okay, and how could we actually bridge this gap that we are having in India? How could we make things better, right? These are the important things that you need to focus. Okay, now your task. What will you do? You'll pick up your book, Flamingo. Lesson number 2, you'll read, because I have explained, but you need to read it silently. As you read, you please underline the main things that you feel like. After reading, there is understanding the text and talking about the text. They are question answers, so you will do them, both of them, in your English literature book. I want you to try both of them. And third question is, okay, let me just have a look. Okay, the third one is thinking about the language. Thinking about the language from the text I'm talking about, the textbook itself. The follow-up after the lesson has understanding the text, talking about the text. There are question answers here, so you just complete them. But the third question is thinking about the language. Now here they have described, okay, they have described literary devices, okay, hyperbole, metaphor and simile, I guess. So in this lesson you will come across many such figures of speech, or you can say literary devices, and there's an exercise that they have given, so I want you to do that as well. So 3 things to be completed, okay: understanding the text, talking about the text, and thinking about the language. You will do all these 3, okay, in your literature book. And I want you to prepare a speech on paradoxical situation in the life of a bangle maker. Prepare a speech. Yes, you could do it orally, because when we meet I would like you to speak about it. I don't want an evidence in the form of a written work, but you can orally prepare for it. Paradoxical situation in the life of a bangle maker. That means, let me just explain. He or she makes beautiful bangles, but their life is not at all matching with what they create. And you could quote some other examples of some other, situations in India that are similar, okay, in the other contexts also. So paradoxical speech on paradoxical situation in the life of bangle makers. This is speech, and I don't want you to write that, but prepare it orally. And when we meet, you're going to really talk about it in class. Remember, poverty, child labor, that is actually the theme. And rat pickers and bangle makers, Seemapuri and Firozabad, Sahib and Mukesh. It was wonderful taking you through this lesson. I'm not sure whether you have got it completely, since I cannot interact and find out that immediately. But of course, when you read and when you do the question answers after you have watched this video, you take your book and read your lesson silently, and then attempt the questions that I have given you, the 3 questions that are following the lesson. Try to do it on your own independently, and if you are able to answer them, I think you have understood, and it'll be fun, to see you doing it independently and confidently. I'm not putting in every day, or maybe every next day something, because I'm really assigning work to you, and I'm giving you time to complete your work. That's why I am actually taking classes every week, on weekly basis, so that you are getting the most of it, right? So please don't think that I'll wait, and don't just wait for my video. You please do the work that is assigned to you. I have given you reading comprehension, all the assignments from all in one, 2 questions on note making, book review, and now this has been added. This is lesson number 2. We are talking about Law Spring from Flamingo. When we meet again, we'll continue with Flamingo. So you need to have that book, and you need to go, you need to follow my instructions first. I may adopt various methods because I like to do things differently. I'll take in different methods for your suggestions. I'm always open. You could just contact me and give me some suggestions if you want me to work accordingly, and we will implement. And remember, you have to prepare yourself to comprehend the lessons and understand the lessons far beyond what only the text says. Like how you connect it into your day-to-day life is much important. And at this note, we'll all have to thank the Almighty for giving us such a wonderful life. And the times we have cribbed, we'll have to actually ask for forgiveness, because we are blessed. We are having so many things to support us, as given we are blessed. We're simply blessed to have so many things in our favor. So thank God. Please, before you sleep, try to exercise gratitude. Say thank you to your parents for providing you everything. Say thank you to God for all the blessings. Thank your teachers who are working with you all the time, and your friends and everyone who makes our lives so beautiful. So exercise gratitude. You may not even say thank you to anyone, but you can express it in your own way. But during this time, I think one of the things that we all should learn is to be grateful, immensely grateful. And really, in our own way, I would like through this medium to request, don't miss a chance to help poor people. Please, 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 please. Please, children, I am very sure about you. You have a very loving and helpful nature, and I know that you will not miss a chance to help poor people, underprivileged people who are really needing our help during this difficult times. So with that, I'll take your leave. Have a very nice day ahead and enjoy your life learning. See you next. Bye.